Hi. I put some tags on Instagram yesterday and asked if anyone wanted to see a tutorial on how I did it, and quite a few of you said yes please, so I've got to make a few more anyway. So what I'm going to do is just show you the ones that I have made. So they are raised relief mixed media tags. These two were done with one technique, this was done with a different technique, and this was done with a third technique. So I'm going to show you 3 different techniques for making the raised relief. And I know lots of you have distress oxides and marvellous things like that. I have one vintage photo and if you had the distress oxides and the beautiful inks, you could do coloured backgrounds and all different sorts of things on top. I'm just going to show you using decoupage because that's how I've got the colour in these. These are for a new journal I'm making. I wanted to feel a bit more spring-like because it's been a really rubbish winter, so I will show you how I've done these. So I've already cut some 300 GSM cardstock, and for some reason I always cut 15.5 by 7. I have no idea why. That's just what I cut. 15, 16, I don't know why I don't do those. I just do 15.5 by 7. You could make these any size you like. So we're going to work through the 3 techniques, and I'm going to turn the camera off and try and put all of these videos together at the end so you don't have to watch all the boring drying process. So I'm also going to give you lots of tips and things about different techniques, different materials you can use to get similar effects. It is mixed media. I'm also going to, this particular one, not all of this, but using an embossing folder and decoupaging a napkin over. I have seen Gail, I'm not going to try and pronounce her surname, bless her, because I'll mess it up, but Gail has a tutorial on how to do the embossing and then the decoupage over the top. So if I remember, I'll try and link Gail down below. It's a brilliant tutorial, so if you just want to do that, then that's a great tutorial for you to go and watch. So the first technique is the straightforward embossing folder. So this is the embossing folder I used for this tag, the tag that I've just shown you. Now, rather than me put this through my embossing folder, I have done that already. So it's a really pretty pattern, hopefully you can see, and that's really nice for using some gilding and things on later. So I'm just going to substitute that, and we're going to pretend we have just embossed this, but I'm going to show you different ways in case you don't have an embossing machine. So that is your raised relief option 1, using your embossing folder. Option 2 is, again, it's very straightforward, and there are so many options for you to use. To get mine, what I used was my die cutting machine. So you can use any kind of shapes, anything you like to get your raised relief. The last ones I did the butterfly, so what I'm going to do today is use my leaves. Again, if you don't have a die cut machine, you can use the pre-cut chipboard pieces, and these are a couple that my friend Suzanne sent to me, which I think would work brilliantly. They might take a little bit more time and a little bit more working, but you can use these, you can use any die cut that's already been made, you can use any shapes, anything you like. That it doesn't have to be too raised for you to get the kind of raised relief. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with this one, because obviously we've already done our embossing. This is my mixed media mat, so please don't Please don't judge me. This is my messy mat, and I love it. So you can see this is where I do lots of mixed media work, because I do other things, not just what I put onto YouTube. So I'm going to use my Winsor & Newton matte medium. You can absolutely use PVA, Mod Podge, it really doesn't matter. PVA, if you're using a PVA, I would water it down a little bit because it's a bit too thick for this. I like matte medium because I like it matte, and the matte Mod Podge is great, but it still gives you a little bit of a shine. So I'm using matte medium. That's my choice, but like I said, lots of other things you can use. Oh, I don't really need to be gluing up there just yet, do I? So I'm going to apply my matte medium, or Mod Podge or PVA, whatever you want to use. So I hope you don't find this too boring. And then I'm just going to place my little bits onto my cardstock. Okay, so we had a bit of an eventful morning. My other half went out to visit his parents and came home with a dog that he found wandering around. It was almost run over, hit by a car, or a van actually. So I had a little visitor in the house this morning until its owner came and picked it up. Apparently it had decided it wanted to get out, so had banged the fence as much as it could until the gate came undone. So that's the first bit. So we've now got our raised relief in place where we want it, and that's part one. So I'm just going to leave that aside for now because we're going to do each stage one at a time. I'm going to keep that out. I don't want to get glue everywhere. So the next method of getting your raised relief is textured paste. And again, I know not everyone has textured paste. I use, again, Winsor & Newton modelling paste. Haven't got a lot of this left. I do use this quite a lot. But what I have got is when I was teaching art and design, we had a recipe that works brilliantly. I find it takes a little bit longer to dry because of the PVA, but this is an option if you do not have textured paste, and I'm not sure if you can read my writing or if I'm going to pop that down so I'm not shaking it, and hopefully that's in focus. But you can make it with 1/4 cup of talcum powder, a tablespoon of PVA glue, and a tablespoon of white acrylic paint. Most crafters will have the PVA and the acrylic. Talcum powder is really, really cheap to pick up. There are other recipes out there, so by all means do some research, but textured paste that you make yourself would work for this, no problem at all. Then what you do is you mix it with water, a very small amount of water at a time, until you get the right kind of texture. And I would say this is kind of dried toothpaste. Yeah, dried toothpaste kind of texture. So that's an option if you don't have textured paste. Now you just pick your stencil. I'm using this one because I found on the ones I worked, this one worked really well. It was a really nice stencil to use. Fairly large pattern would be easier to work with. It's not impossible to use a more intricate pattern, but you know, if you're doing this for the first time, then you know a smaller pattern definitely works better. So I'm going to decide where to put my stencil. I think I'm just going to have yeah, I think I'm going to have it coming across on this one. So basically you grab your textured paste. You don't have to use one of these, credit card would work fine. And you basically, see now I'm working at a funny angle, you spread it over. You'll find it won't move too much once you've started applying your textured paste. Now it's going to mess up now I've said that, isn't it? So what I do is I apply it, I remove the stencil, I'm going to move the card. I thought I'd put my fingers right through it then. What I am going to do is just remove that bit there. I don't want that bit. And then what I do is I just run my spatula over my stencil so I can replace any textured paste without wasting it. If you make your own, just stick it in an airtight container and it will last a while. If it gets a bit too thick, what you can do is just add a bit more water to it. Okay, so sorry, I don't have to do this straight away. I'm just going to give this a wipe to get the worst off. This one is an AliExpress stencil. I think it was about 50p. I didn't wait too long for it actually, probably about 3 weeks, and it's a cake stencil, so it's really, really cheap. Really cheap. Okay, so we now have our 3 different raised relief. Part 1 is done, and I'm just going to turn the camera off now because I'm going to dry this and I'm going to wait for this to dry as well before we apply more and work on step 2. So we're back, these are dry. So hopefully my paintbrush is not dry that I used to my for my medium, but we're going to move on to covering these with the decoupage. So off camera, so you didn't have to be bored, I've picked the napkins that I would like to use. Now some of the ones that I used for these came from the lovely Chantel, so thank you for those, Chantel. The ones that I'm using today, these come from lovely Monique, so thank you Monique for the napkins you sent me, and I'll link Steel Crafting and Chantel HotHeadStitches down below. So I'm going to use these 3. Now these 2 are already separated, and I know I did this in my playing cards tutorial. I'm just going to show you again Crafty Irina's amazing method for removing the back of napkins. So I'm going to grab, you can never find the end, can you, of tape. Right, okay, so here's my tape. I'm just going to quickly fold that in half and take the first layer of the napkin off. It doesn't need to be the whole. And then I'm just going to use another piece of the tape to remove the next piece. And that removes the back really easily. So there we go. I'm going to use that one on here. I'm going to use that bit on there and this bit on here. So I'm really sorry if you want to fast forward this. It might be quite a boring part of the video. So what I'm going to do, I just better make sure I'm actually recording. Yeah. Okay. So grab my matte medium. Again, you can use your watered down PVA, your Mod Podge, whatever you like. Now I use a bit of a circular motion just to make sure it gets into all of those little nooks and crannies. And this is why I use my mixed media mat. So I apologise again for the mess. But that's it. Okay. So try and do this as quickly as I can, but you know what will happen, I'll do it quickly, it won't work. So you want an even coat, you don't want too much, but you want enough to make it stick. You'll find that the corners will dry really quickly, and you probably will have to come in and re-glue those, because that's just how it is when you work with napkins. So then you find your piece of napkin that you want to use. I really want that flower, but I really want that one too. Right, so you pop it down. Don't worry about creases, they just add to the texture. Okay, so then we go over the top fairly gently, to bring out that pattern. Stippling works really well. Oh, I'm really sorry, this is a bit boring. So I'm just going to give it a bit of a coat first of all, and then I'm going to go round. Oh, typical, isn't it? No one ever contacts me on my phone till I do a video. Now at the moment you're not going to really see much of that pattern, but we will bring that out later, so don't worry about that. And what I'll do is just lift it up, have a little look at the angles and make sure I've got that pattern out everywhere. Just going to go over those corners. The top corners are not such a big issue because we're going to cut those off later. Right, so that's one. Just going to pop that over there to dry. This one, exactly the same process, so please feel free to skip forward if you don't want to watch this again. Again, a bit of a circular motion around the raised areas. That's quite funny actually, because my other half's in the room and he's sitting there like he's playing musical statues at a party. If he moves he might make too much noise. Okay, so I'm going to line this up where I want it. It's slightly too small, but I'm alright with that because we're going to go around the edges. Oh, no, it does fit. Okay, so give that a little smooth out, fairly gently. I'm going to start at the top. And then we get to the raised area. Again, you want to make sure you get into all those nooks and crannies. If you're using a heavy patterned napkin, it really doesn't matter what colour your die cuts are. I'm using green and I'm happy for that green to be showing through. If you don't like the colour, then I would recommend you either paint it first. But these ones, for example, that I did yesterday with the butterfly, oh, I can't find it now. That one of the butterflies was yellow and one of the butterflies was pink. Now, because of going over it later, it really doesn't matter what the colours are. So don't worry about that. As you can see, I'm going to have a little bit here that's not sticking. But that's our second one, and I'm pretty happy that I've got in. Just dab it, stipple around the edges of your pattern, and I'm happy that that one's coated well. So finally we have our textured paste one. You can gesso if you want to gesso, if you're using something that you're not sure the textured paste will stick to, but I have used textured paste for a very long time and I've never had a problem with it sticking to cardstock. Obviously it is pretty much a very, very thick gesso. And again, if you're interested, there are lots of recipes online for making your own gesso. Just make sure that raised area is completely covered. Okay. And then on with the last piece. This is very, very similar to the playing card tutorial I did a while ago. And it is nice to have some creases. You don't want too many, but it is nice to have some because you then get your, you can bring out those creases and the texture a bit later. So to make sure we get all of that. Again, you might find it difficult to see your raised area, so just move it around to make sure you've got that completely covered, especially the smaller lines. Just hit that at the camera. Okay, so now this has to dry. So I'm gonna turn it off again and come back when it's dry. Okay, so they are dry enough, and what I've done is just trimmed the tissue paper off, so we're ready to kind of do the next step. So you can do this however you like. I know lots of people have different methods to do this, but to make my tag shape, I just line up my corner with a square on my board. I go to the diagonal and cut that off. So that's how I make my tag shapes, and I know every tag that I make will have the same corner. Not that that's a big deal. Sometimes I use a round punch, obviously, but this is just how I make my, I hope I'm in frame. And on this board it's a little bit difficult because some of the lines are a little bit dirty, let's say. I'll do this now because if you try and do it in a little while, you're going to have more layers on your tag and paint and all sorts. So it's easy to do it now. Ooh. Managed to keep my fingers recently, so that's good news. Which was pretty amazing considering what I did for the project I'm working on now, the new journal. It's a binder style journal. I'll show you and tell you about that when I, so let's keep them. So we've got our textured paste, our die cuts and our embossing. So all I do is go in with my distress ink. Oh, I do feel like this is going to be a very long and boring video. There's two reasons I do this. One, because it helps to start to show the relief. And two, obviously I don't really like things looking too clean and new. So you can actually really start to see, well I hope you can, the embossing. So I'm going to do the same with this one. I'm waiting for my re-inker. They're supposed to come any day now. But this is a bit hit and miss, whether this works. Ooh. See, and this is why I said keep your brush handy. So just take a little bit out of the lid. Oh, my brush is a bit hard now. That will dry really quick. Just this corner. There we go. That's that one. And then the third one. I do go in again with a darker colour. And this is why you need to make sure it's really dry, because you will actually rip some of the tissue paper if it's not quite dry. Okay, so this is where you could, if you had them, use your distress inks, your alcohol sprays, anything you want to use. I have one, well I have two actually, two sprays at the moment. I sometimes make acrylic sprays, but I have an ink spray mist and a cosmic shimmer mist. Now I really love the colour of this, but it doesn't come out very well, so I'm going to use my pink spray mist. Okay, I'll just get the heat tool on that. So, I've used my heat tool. As you can see, I've melted my little mat because I forgot to remove it. Never mind. I've got plenty more of that. That was an old disposable tablecloth. So, hopefully you can see. Like I said, you can use any inks you like. I've just used the shimmer. I'm not sure if the camera's gonna really pick that up, but just gives another little layer. So now I'm going to go in again with a different ink. This time I'm using sorry, ground espresso. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and flatten this a bit and just very gently go over my raised area. And this is for two reasons. One, because I want some of the dark areas to still pick up and come through, but two, I want it to be really clear where my embossing and raised relief is. And I'm now going to go around the edges too before I do the final kind of layering step. And again, this is just so some of the dark will show through. I'm going to show you 3 different ways of really bringing out that raised relief area. So that's one. That's quite important for some of them, especially this one, for example, because of the pattern. It's quite difficult to see the raised relief. I told you this was going to be a long and boring video. You asked for this. Okay. So, how do you feel the time? I don't want you to get bored watching me ink. So, I've just got this one to do. Now this one has a lot more raised area and it's going to make this quite dark, but I really like it. I'm actually really liking this napkin as well over this. And obviously where you've got the shimmer is in all the little nooks and crannies, so that's still always going to show through. There we go. So I'm going to hold that up, but I'm not sure if you're really going to be able to get much from that. So we've now got our 3 tags at this stage, and that's perfectly fine. You could leave them here. They're pretty. I'm going to show you how we can bring out that raised area. So the first one, I think I'm going to just work out which one I'm going to do which with. This one I think I'm going to use, kind of want to use the goldy bronze colour on that. This one I want to use silver. That one I'm also going to use bronze, but I'm going to show you a different way. So we're going to do the silver one first. And what I've got here is metallic gilding polish. There is a sponge, which I very, very rarely use. I've got my baby wipes at the ready. So what I do is I like to go in with my finger. Now this stuff, once it's down, it's down. There's not a lot you could do with it. So I just use my finger and dab it around the side of the tub. And this is where it helps using the ink, because you can kind of see a little bit more where your raised area is. And then what you do is you just gently with your finger go kind of over this raised pattern. Now hopefully I'm not going to make a big blob somewhere. Even if you do, it's no big deal, they still look lovely. So I'm not pushing down hard at all. I'm literally just rubbing my finger over that raised area. And I'm trying not to rush too much, but then I'm trying not to make this too long. So and you can decide how much you leave, how much you do. It's all taste and obviously depending on the project. This gilding paste is not too expensive. I think the gold was a bit more expensive, which is probably why I only bought the silver. And I'm going to show you other methods for doing this similar technique. So now what I do is, this stuff dries really quick, is I'm going to go around my edge. Now in some areas I'm going to make it heavier and in some areas not so heavy, so you can see, so it's not even and you can see some of the darker ink underneath. So this is technique 1. And I can't really stop, I can't really leave this and say I'll move on to the next one, so you don't have to watch, because once I've started something you kind of have to finish it, don't you? I do anyway. Even if I'm reading a book and I don't like it, I still have to finish it. So I do think you can use a tool, you can use a sponge if you want to. I just find that using your finger you've got a bit more control over where you apply and how much you apply. So there we go, we've gone all the way around. And now I just want to add a little bit more, and I'm only going to put a tiny bit on my finger at a time, because you will end up with kind of blobs. And I'm just going to bring out some little areas that I like. Some of the creases. This is very subtle and I don't know if you can see on the camera. Just going to add a few little bits here and there. It's got a nice crease there, I'd like to bring out a little bit more. So, I'm really not sure how much you can see on the camera, but that's the first one. Okay, so that was the gilding paste. This one, yeah, this might go horribly wrong because it's a bit easier if you're using a sponge, but this is just a bronze acrylic, but you can use any acrylic. You don't really need to use a metallic one. I've put way too much in my bowl here, and again same technique. I'm just going to dab most of it off my finger and then very gently go over the raised area. You go from one extreme to another, either putting loads of paint on your finger and it's too much, or not enough so it's not actually catching. This takes a bit of practice, but it's worth doing. Like I said, you don't have to even do this. You can go in with your alcohol inks or your distress inks, any sprays really, and just play with it. There's quite a bit at the top here, and the tags obviously bend a little bit, but don't worry too much because you can always flatten that out later, and I back these, which does help flatten them out too. There you go. Okay. So again, just do it until you're happy. Oh, I think I want a little bit of a heavier gold area down here. And then around the edges, like we did with the silver. Now this one's going to take a little bit longer to dry because it is acrylic paint. And this, obviously, when you're turning it around, you just need to be a little bit mindful that you're going to get paint all over you, and then you'll transfer it to either the rest of the project. Or see where I've gone a bit heavy there, but that's quite nice. It just gives it that kind of older look. It's not about being perfect. Nothing I do is. And I want it a bit thicker and heavier at the bottom. I'm going to kind of layer it on a bit thicker here. That corner. I think I want a bit more at the top as well. Okay, so that's number 2. This one baby right comes in handy. So the third and final one, in case you don't have your acrylics or you don't have your gilding paste, this one I'm going to use oil pastels. You can use whatever brand you like. These are I use these quite a bit in my work, so I think, I don't know whether to go for the gold or the bronze. I'm going to go for the gold. Yeah. And again, the same kind of technique, but you'll get a very different effect with the pastel. And you can just go in, I don't know if that's going to show up. I'm going to have to go for the bronze. That's not really going to work very well on this colour. And it's just about going over. You get a very similar effect with the pastel. It will feel very different as well on the tag. You can use any colour you like. White works quite well because we're going to go over it again one more time anyway with the inks. Although it doesn't work as well over the pastel, the ink, because it's a resist, so it's not quite. It will pick up the areas where you haven't got the pastel, which is quite good. So, and I like this because I want that green, some of that green still showing through. So then I'm going to go round with the pastel. And as you can see, it looks just as good as the acrylic and the gilding. Just go a bit heavy there. So the last step for this is to go in with your inks again. Now I'm going to use the espresso on the pastel because I do want to pick up some of those areas. It's quite difficult to see on the camera, it's quite subtle. I think I'm going to use it on the gold, but I'm not going to do that just yet because that's not dry. And I'm going to just go over it. It looks a bit more tarnished if you go over it with the ink again, which I like. It takes that sort of stark metallic off it, which is quite good. And then I'm just going to randomly ink the edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly dry this one, and then I'll come back and show you what this one looks like once it's been inked. Okay, so I dried it and then I just ran over it with the ink like I did the other ones. And what I've also done is, or what we're going to do is just, these were all backed onto cartridge paper, but I don't have any more tea stains, so this one's going to be backed onto tea stained paper. So I'm just going to quickly go around with the glue. And the reason I use Fabri-Tac for this is because wet glue will kind of make it bend a little bit more, which obviously I don't want. I also, before I came back on, just filled in some of the glue where I'd lifted up the tracing paper in a few places, the tissue paper in a few places. So just gonna glue that down. Okay, so just going to quickly trim this. I've already done the other two, so you haven't got to watch me do those. And we've got just the final step to turn them into tags. But I mean, this is the majority of the work is now over, so you can, it's hard to tell what's the silver and what's the paper, so you can absolutely leave them like this, job done. I'll just grab my new tool. Thank you everybody who gave me advice about my pants hole punching tool, and for recommending the crocodile. My other half actually ended up buying me the Big Bite, so it's absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to punch my holes. Probably should wait until the glue has dried. Hope this is in frame. Okay, so oh, there we go. We've got our holes. They're all backed, and we're just gonna pop in the eyelets. As you can see, I did brush that a little bit. Well, this is not very good, is it? I'm going to pop a little bit of glue there. Okay. I need to trim it a little bit more too. I obviously take a lot more time normally, so I think I'm going to go for a copper one in that, no, brass in that, copper in that, and I'm going to go for silver in that one. The eyelets, and just pop these in. So I usually bring this a little bit down, and then actually put it in might help, won't it? Oh, I'm still on the hole punch. Hey, there you go, rookie error. So that's the first one done. Second one. Getting a bit warm now. And that's the third one. So these are the 3 tags we have made. So what I've done to some of these is I've just popped on like some eyelash trim. Oh, do you know how hard it is putting eyelash trim through a charm? Not easy. So I've popped that one on, and this one I've popped on a little ladybird, and this one has just got some sari silk. These ones I haven't done yet, and that one's some sari silk. This one I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the butterfly. but some of these will be, like I said, for my new journal. Oh, one last really quick thing. If you don't have a stencil, you can always make your own. I just did this really quickly to show you could use holes, and I use things like this quite a lot. It actually works really well. Any kind of punch you have, a doily, anything like that, you can use as a stencil. So these are our 3 finished tags, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give these away. So if you would like to leave a comment down below, I will pop you into a little drawer to give these away. I will finish them and put some trim and things on them and make sure they are all good to go. So that is our little tag tutorial for raised relief and mixed media. There are so many options for this. If you wanted to use the tissue that you removed, you could keep it white and you can paint them. You can use different inks and sprays, whatever you want, but these are what we have made today. So thanks ever so much for watching. I hope you weren't too bored, and whoops, I was going to show you the recipe again for the paste, but now there's stuff everywhere, so I won't. So thanks a lot. See you later. Bye.